Hello, welcome to another edition of Crop Life Retail Week. I'm Eric Sfiligoj, editor of Crop Life and Crop Life Iron, here again with Lara Sowinski. Laura, how you doing?
And thank you. How are you, Eric?
I'm doing good. I know most of the country has been in a deep freeze, and I know for our friends down south, they are dealing with a sort of white powder that is not the stuff that's on beignets, but is actually snow. So that I'm sure that's a bit of a culture shock for a lot of our friends down in places like New Orleans or in Pensacola, Florida, or even Atlanta, Georgia. I saw a video online of people snowball fighting on Bourbon Street. That must have been fun. I guess you missed that when you were in New Orleans a few weeks back. But that's something I never would have guessed a video of would be not CGI generated because you would not expect it, but there it was. So.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's kind of strange to see. But yeah, especially it may be lingering on because the temperatures are so cold. I don't know. I don't know.
I would have more sympathy for people in the South, but then again, you guys live in the South because you're trying to get away from the snow. So I guess that's our little gift to you from up north. Um, Deal with it for a day or two before it goes back up to 70 degrees and you guys are wearing shorts again. So I've just lost all our viewers in
I
Florida and
I was
Georgia
gonna
and
say,
Louisiana. I know, I'm
which
sorry.
one just clicked you off? Illinois.
All right. Well, hey, listen, since it is winter, the middle of winter, of course, this is the time of year when there's a lot of state associations having their annual meetings. And I actually was privileged enough to go to one in Peoria, Illinois. Our friends, the Illinois Fertilizer and Chemical Association, had their annual meeting. And that took place on the 21st through the 23rd of January, this past week. It was a good meeting as always. Lots of folks there talking about what's going on in the marketplace, getting ready for the season ahead. And I know our friend Kevin KJ Johnson, who is the president of IFCA, gave the state of the association and the world for ag in Illinois. And he basically mentioned the fact that in 2025, they got a few priorities on the plate. One is a lot of states apparently do continuing education versus one single test through the year for their applicators. And I guess they're looking to pass legislation in the spring session in Illinois that they're going to allow licensed applicators to take continuing education classes instead in the state. So that's one of their priorities for the upcoming year. They're also looking to expand the restricted Class B CDL licenses in Illinois so they can get more drivers for logistics purposes. And IFCA is teaming up with our friends at the Ag Retailers Association, and they are trying to build a national anhydrous ammonia online safety class. So
Awesome.
that's something they're going to be working on here in 25. And then the other news, KJ Johnson mentioned that they're going to be moving the IFCA offices. They're going to stay in Bloomington. We're going to be basically going from their building now across the street, and they're going to be taking over the old application training center that was run by the ASMARC Institute there in Bloomington. So going to be just a stone's throw from the fairgrounds where they hold the Maggie show every summer. So
Wow. That's exciting. Yeah, lots of good stuff on the agenda for IFCA. All good things. I like that online training course and like you said, continuing ed. Um, good things. Good way to go about it.
yep, agreed. And one other thing then, again, one of the things they do at every IFCA annual meeting, there are several speakers talking about topics that folks are interested in going on in the marketplace, including the
Mhm.
Endangered Species Act, which did come up. And then they had a session talking about weather, of course, always important for the growers going into an upcoming growing season. But then we had a speaker, Brian Lutz from Corteva AgriScience, who spoke about AI in agriculture and the future of AI in agriculture. And here I've got a little video clip of Brian talking about what is going on with AI today in agriculture. and how the trends may play out here in 2025. So have a listen to this.
Both in our personal lives, but also when we look throughout the ag industry. Um, but it's still hard to find examples of how generative AI is being used. And I think that's pretty important because, like I said, there's hundreds of billions of dollars that are flowing into from venture capital, from tech majors, and it's really all spurred by generative AI, or largely spurred by generative AI, and yet it's still a bit hard to find examples of where does this all take place. A big part of that answer is agentic AI, and if you haven't heard agentic AI, you're going to hear about it as we go through 2025 or 2026. But this is really starting to build the applications or the tools that are going to create the demand for generative AI models and these large language models. So an agent is really, at the core of all of these agents is an LLM, a large language model built off of those transformers. But then it's effectively wrapped in software. So there's got to be some human interface, your ability to interact with the model. Maybe some of you know this, but one of the things that really sparked a lot of this, when OpenAI released ChatGPT, there were earlier versions of the GPT model that were available that developers could hit through an API interface. But what really caused it to take off was by just putting it in a website, so that you don't have to be a software developer to access the model. You can just access it through a website. And suddenly, it's a really cool experience. I don't know how many of you have used it, but it's kind of phenomenal when you work with the model the first time to see how capable it is of conversing with you like a human. But just that interface was a key part to it. And then, of course, for an agent, an agent by definition has to be able to take some kind of action. So there's got to be some type of tools or ways that these agents can respond. And then oftentimes there's some specific data that agents are given to work with. If you would have asked me maybe even just a year ago, well, hey, the future is going to be maybe more agentic AI, and that justifies all of the investment we're seeing, I would have been extremely skeptical. But over the last year, I'd say we're really starting to see, I think, a lot more of the potential in these agents in the future, and it's driven by two things. One, the models at the center of the agents are evolving very quickly, but then also all of the tools and the ability that the agents can access is improving.
So that's what Brian Lutz had to say from Corteva regarding AI in agriculture. Again, Laura, I know I'm very taken by how everything is so rapidly developing. At one point, Brian showed a timeline of when AI first was introduced as a concept or thought about as a concept back in the 1950s to where we are today, where these programs are running billions of calculations per minute, per second. And he had mentioned that a company like Corteva, to discover new molecules for use in crop protection, he said it used to take years and a lot of manpower, and now he's like, they can find these proteins that will bind to a molecule in a fraction of the time. So it's really, really fascinating to watch this all develop.
Yeah, it's I'm glad that you mentioned he was there. If you recall, Brian was a keynote speaker at the Vision 2024 conference. And
Right.
he mentioned the same thing in particular with Corteva's R&D, just the impact that Gen AI has had on the research and development, the timeline, the capital required for that, et cetera. It was incredible. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm glad he's out and about spreading the word.
Yep, he did a good job. So yeah, I'm sure anybody who was there hearing him in person talk, again, if you get the chance, I know he's made a couple of speeches, like you said, over the last couple of years, and I'm sure he will be making more. So please partake if you can. So,
Cool.
all right. So Miss Laura, I know you had a trip recently down to the Beltway conference down in New Orleans, where there were snowball fighting the other day. But when you were there, it was a little warmer. But our friends from the cotton industry were all gathered. So I think you have some news to share on that front, correct?
Yeah, I do. I just, and I believe I mentioned it, quickly, the last time we were together on Retail Week here, but just really want to say, what a wonderful conference, this Beltway Cotton Conference, the annual conference. Again, day one, was devoted to the EPA's work plan for ESA. Fantastic collection of speakers here. Kelly Tyndall from EPA, Clayton Myers, USDA, Leah Dizzy and Ashley Frank from Compliance Services International, Stanley Culpepper, University of Georgia, and Chad Brewer, Steve Hensley from the National Cotton Council. Um, one of the things that they mentioned was the timeline. Again, we saw the final herbicide strategy released in late August, this past August. Stanley Culpepper, during his presentation, we know that by the end of March, we will have the final insecticide strategy released. And he made a point of saying, look, when we saw the draft version of the herbicide strategy in 2022, we were it kind of took our breath away. My words, not his. But he said, over the course of, again, the whole industry coming together, academics, government, in industry, growers, retailers, both, that by the time the final herbicide strategy was released, much had changed. And it was something that Stanley said that we could work with as farmers and growers and retailers. So again, we'll be keeping a close eye on that, but I think, and you mentioned at IFCA, a lot of talk about ESA and what that means. And again, happy to see it on the Beltway Cotton Conferences program. CPDA will have a lot of content devoted to this topic in their upcoming meeting in early May in Florida. So I think that now with, certainly there's a lot to this, but as the industry comes together, education, awareness, speakers, people talking about it, certainly our special report in December, I think everyone's feeling a little more comfortable with it in that, this is something that we're just gonna, it's here, let's deal with it. Let's figure out how we can mitigate, what tools can we get? How do we understand this? The question I had when I was in New Orleans, though, I asked the panel, these folks on the ESA panel here, about the compliance part of it. And again, thinking back to Food Safety Modernization Act in 2011, other sizable compliance regs that have been released, over the years, whether it's from the FDA or whomever. Typically, you see like a grace period, like, something that's so massive. It's not, my feeling was always that the government doesn't want to be the we got you, you're that it's kind of a let's enforce, but a grace period so that we can educate while we're doing it. Because again, most everyone certainly is in a good faith effort trying to understand and comply with these things. So I asked them about that, what when it comes to compliance. And Chad Myers from USDA did say, look, we're not really quite there yet. These things are still kind of rolling out. We're just seeing the handful of label changes, et cetera. So, but that's something that, people do have questions about. What are the risks for the applicators, the growers, et cetera. So again, by the end of March, we'll see the final insecticide strategy, which should be every bit as big as the herbicide strategies. I think these two in particular, the herbicide and the insecticide, were ones that we're keeping an eye on. April 26th, we should see the draft fungicide strategy. It seems like a long ways off, but just putting it out there. The final fungicide strategy is due by the end of November 2026. And just one more thing from the Beltway Conference, just to shout out Jim Stedman, our colleague and editor for Cotton Grower. We attended an event on the evening of January 15th. So each year, the University Extension Cotton Specialists select a colleague to recognize as the Beltway Extension Cotton Specialist of the Year. Ben McKnight, PhD of Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service, was this year's winner. Really a great evening, and we heard from Ben and his colleagues, and a really great event. So this award event, sponsored by Tim Dabbert, PhD, Cotton Technical Product and Strategy Lead for Bayer. So congratulations to Ben McKnight. It was great. Again, what a learning experience for me to understand, a little bit more about cotton, understand, the shared things with regards to corn and bean growers, for instance, but certainly very unique commodity and sector as well. But it was great. So
Very good. Well, yeah, the ESA stuff, of course, that's going to be something we're following throughout the year, of course. And viewers, please pay attention to Crop Life's publications and our website and our videos, because as information comes in, we'll be reporting it to you as we get it and try to give you some perspective on what it might actually mean for everyone. I'm going to be curious, Laura, again, to see, when these rules are all in place, and then how the rules are going to be enforced, who's actually going to be watching the enforcement of these new labels and the label changes, and what that's going to be really key to a lot of this, because again, you can put a lot of regulations out there, but if there's no watchdog, no champion for it, then how onerous could it be for everybody involved? So I'm going to be curious to watch that. So
yeah, just kind of an answer to that. So I think this individual state departments of agriculture will be
they will.
certainly, taking a very prominent compliance and enforcement role. But you're right. I think particularly, and this came up as well during the conference, with the new administration, changes again to staffing, to funding for the agencies and so forth, and the programs themselves. What changes may or may not happen. So still so much, yet to be known, but yeah, you're right. That's why we'll be covering this topic for sure. The
Well,
next.
yeah, and it of course, like I said, as I started our program today, the fact that this is that season where a lot of the state associations are having their annual meetings, and I just throw it out there. I mean, folks, if you're not members of your state associations and haven't been up until now, you know what, going forward, you may want to consider membership, because those folks, since they know the legalese and they know all the legislature people that need to be known, and can get into their offices and be heard, maybe supporting them on your behalf is not a bad idea. So,
Oh, that's great advice. Absolutely.
all
Good.
right. Well, I'll get off the soapbox now. All right. Well, Miss Laura, then as we end the program, as we always do, time for your favorite part of the show. Time for fun with numbers.
Give me something about cotton. No.
Actually, no, I've got something more on the technology side for you.
Oh, okay. All right.
So your number this week is 8%.
Okay.
A small number. So, Miss Laura, is 8%, is that the percentage of U.S. power capacity Gen AI models will be using by 2030? Is it B, the percent increase in new Gen AI systems to be used by agriculture by the end of 2025? Is it C, the percent increase in new AI computing power improvements by mid-2025? Or is it D, the percentage of time I heard, hey, you're the crop life retail guy, while I attended the IFCA annual meeting this
Oh,
past week?
that's
I got to
great.
tell you,
Well,
that number was a heck of a lot higher than
I was
8%.
gonna say, you probably had to wear dark glasses and, sneak in the back door. Um, I'm actually thinking A is higher than 8%, so I'm going to go with B.
Oh, I'm sorry. You should have gone with your first instinct. No, A is the correct answer. This
Oh,
came from Brian Lutz's presentation. He mentioned the fact
oh,
that,
wow.
yeah, he mentioned the fact that right now, because of Gen AI models and the computing power they need, they're currently utilizing their data centers, are utilizing 4% of the US power capacity, and it's going to need to increase in the next 5 years to double to 8%. And he also mentioned that to increase this energy capacity demand, that the US is probably going to need to invest somewhere around $50 billion in electricity capacity increases between now and 2030. So again, if you got a little money laying around, invest in the power company stocks, because it sounds like they are definitely going to be investing in the future.
Wow. Well, I know we've been talking a lot about the importance of upgrading our grid so that we don't lose that power transmission from where it's generated to where it's consumed. So maybe this will get us, but no, that's great. It's a lot. It's a lot.
It is a lot. And again, if I remember correctly on these how these technology models improve exponentially over time, that if we need in 5 years doubling, then you double 2 years after that and double another year after that. And we're looking at about 25% probably by 2045, 2050. That could be really a bit of a strain on the US power system, I suppose. So,
Yeah, and those numbers that you just said, and like you said, the exponential,
mhm.
it seems very plausible, if not more.
Yes, mind-boggling as always. All right. Well, thanks, folks, for joining us for this edition of a Retail Week. We hope you enjoyed it and learned a few things. And Miss Laura and I will be back next week to share with you what is going on in the marketplace. So until then, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.
If you have questions or comments about today's episode of Retail Week, contact us by email or Twitter, or type your message in the comment section below. Your feedback is important to us. We will try our best to address your thoughts in next week's episode, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel.